You will kneel before your king." The words echoed through the grand hall like thunder, bouncing off ancient stone walls that had witnessed centuries of judgment, execution, and submission. Every wolf present felt the command in their bones, the alpha voice so powerful it made their knees want to buckle, even though it was not directed at them. But the girl standing in chains at the center of the circle did not move. She did not flinch. She did not even blink. Cassian Thornwood, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, Supreme Commander of the Wolf Councils, and the most feared predator in 5 centuries, felt something he had not experienced in over 300 years. Confusion. The girl before him was nothing. A wisp of a thing, with tangled dark hair and mud-stained clothes. Her wrists bound in silver chains that should have been burning her skin if she possessed even a drop of wolf blood. The charges against her were serious. Conspiracy. Treason. Providing aid and comfort to enemies of the crown. Practicing forbidden magic. The evidence was circumstantial at best, but the local alpha who had brought her here swore she had healed rebels who should have died from their wounds, that she possessed knowledge no common human should have access to, that she spoke in dreams to forces beyond the veil. Cassian had seen 1,000 accused stand where she stood now. Most begged, some cried, a few tried to maintain dignity through their fear, but all of them responded to his alpha command. All of them felt the weight of his presence pressing down on their souls like a physical thing. This girl, this Rhiannon, simply stared at him with eyes the color of storm clouds, and waited. I said kneel. Cassian let more power bleed into his voice, enough that several courtiers actually gasped and grabbed onto pillars for support. The girl's lips parted slightly. For a moment, he thought she might speak. Instead, she tilted her head to one side like a curious bird examining something fascinating and utterly foreign. The silence that followed was deafening. Cassian could hear his own heartbeat, could smell the fierce sweat of every wolf in the hall, could taste the tension in the air like copper on his tongue. And beneath it all, beneath the familiar sense of his court and his kingdom, he smelled something else. Something that made his beast stir in the depths of his consciousness, where he kept it chained. The creature inside him was not merely a wolf. Cassian's bloodline carried something older, something that predated the common shifter by millennia. His ancestors had called it the Devourer. The texts that still existed called it an abomination. Cassian called it his greatest weapon and his deepest shame. It was a thing of pure predatory instinct, of hunger that could never be satisfied, of rage that burned hotter than any furnace. He had learned to control it over centuries of practice, to let it out only when he needed to destroy something utterly and completely. But he never fully controlled it. He simply kept it caged. Now, for the first time since he was a newly turned alpha, barely out of his transition and still learning what he had become, Cassian felt the beast move without his permission. It pressed against the mental barriers he maintained constantly, not with rage or hunger, but with something he did not have a name for. Interest. No, not interest. Recognition. Who are you? The question came out rougher than he intended. Several council members exchanged glances. This was not protocol. The accused was meant to answer charges, not engage in conversation with the king himself. Rhiannon's expression did not change, but something flickered in those gray eyes. Something ancient and aware. "You already know my name," she said. Her voice was soft, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the hall with perfect clarity. Not because of any magical amplification, simply because every single person present had gone. Absolutely silent, straining to hear. "Your name tells me nothing," Cassian said. He descended 3 steps from his throne, and the movement sent his personal guards into high alert. They knew what it meant when their king moved closer to a perceived threat. It meant he was considering whether to kill it himself. Names are just sounds we make to identify meat and bone. I am asking what you are." This time, something definitely flickered across her face. Confusion. Genuine, unfeigned confusion. "I am nothing," Rhiannon said. "I am a healer. I grow herbs and set bones and deliver babies in a village so small you probably do not even know it exists. I have never hurt anyone. I have never conspired against your throne. I have never even seen you before today, and I do not understand why I am here." The words rang with truth. Cassian had interrogated enough liars to know the taste of deception, and there was none in her voice. But there was also no fear, and that was wrong. Everyone feared him. Even his own council members, wolves who had served him for decades, still carried a baseline level of wariness in his presence. They knew what he was capable of. They knew what lived inside him. This girl should be terrified. Instead, she looked at him like he was a puzzle she could not quite solve. "The charges are clear," Cassian said, more to the room than to her. "You healed men who attacked a supply caravan, men who killed 6 of my soldiers, men who were found in possession of stolen weapons and tactical information about guard rotations. You gave them aid. You helped them survive wounds that should have killed them. That is treason." "They came to my door bleeding," Rhiannon said. There was no defiance in her tone, just a simple statement of fact. "I am a healer. When someone is dying, I heal them. I do not ask their politics first. I do not demand to see proof of loyalty before I stop the bleeding. I save lives. That is what I do. That is all I do." A counselor, too. Cassian's right, Lord Brennan. One of the old guard who had served Cassian's father leaned forward. "A convenient philosophy when you are providing aid to rebels and traitors. Perhaps you should be more selective about whose lives you choose to preserve." Rhiannon finally looked away from Cassian to meet Lord Brennan's gaze. "Perhaps you should be more concerned about why your soldiers drive people to rebellion in the first place." The court erupted. Gasps, shouts. One counselor actually stood up, his face purple with rage. "How dare you? You stand accused of treason, and you have the audacity to question the king's rule." But Cassian held up one hand, and instant silence fell. His eyes never left Rhiannon. "You are either very brave or very stupid," he said quietly. "I have not decided which." "I am neither," she replied. "I am simply tired. Tired of being afraid. Tired of watching good people die because they dared to ask for better treatment. Tired of pretending that healing someone makes me a criminal. If you are going to execute me, then do it. But do not insult me by pretending this is about justice. This is about power. This is about making an example. I understand that. I just wish you would be honest about it." Something cracked in Cassian's chest. Something he had not felt in so long he almost did not recognize it. Respect. This slip of a girl, this nobody from nowhere, stood before the most powerful alpha in the known world and spoke truth to his face without flinching. She was either completely insane, or she genuinely did not understand who she was dealing with. He needed to know which. "You want honesty?" Cassian asked. "Then let me be honest with you, Rhiannon of the nameless village. I have ruled for 347 years. In that time, I have executed 2,612 wolves for treason, rebellion, or crimes against the crown. I remember every single one of their faces. I remember their names. I remember the sound they made when they realized they were about to die. Do you know why I remember?" Rhiannon said nothing, but her eyes never wavered from his. "Because I killed most of them myself," Cassian continued. "Because I wanted them to understand, in their final moments, that there is a cost to defiance, that there is a price for rebellion, that I am not merely a king they can petition or negotiate with. I am the apex predator of this world. I am the monster that keeps other monsters in check. And I do not tolerate threats to the order I have built. He took another step down, then another. The guards tensed. Protocol said he should remain on the dais. Protocol said he should let the executioner handle this if she was to die. Protocol said a lot of things that Cassian was about to ignore. So yes, he said, you are absolutely right. This is about power. This is about making an example. And you will serve that purpose whether you understand it or not. He was close now, close enough to see the flecks of silver in her gray eyes, close enough to smell that strange scent that clung to her, something like rain and earth, and something else he could not identify. Close enough that when he spoke next, only she could hear him. I am going to ask you one more time. What are you? And Rhiannon, this girl who should be sobbing or pleading or offering him anything he wanted in exchange for her life, smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was sad, and knowing, and resigned. I told you, she said. I am nothing. But I think you already knew that. I think that is what scares you. The world stopped. Just for a heartbeat. Just for one impossible moment where Cassian Thornwood, the unkillable Alpha King, the beast in human skin, felt something he had not felt since he was mortal and weak and human 3.5 centuries ago. Fear. Not fear of her. Fear of the fact that she was right. And then his beast moved. Not pressed against its chains. Not growled or snarled or demanded. Release. It moved. It rose up from the depths of his soul, where he kept it locked away. It tore through every mental barrier he had constructed over centuries of practice. It ripped through his consciousness like a wildfire through dry grass. And it did something that should have been impossible. It took control. Cassian had enough presence of mind to shout a warning. Clear the hall! Everyone out! Now! Wolves scattered. Centuries of survival instinct overrode courtly protocol as lords, and ladies and guards and servants fled for the exits. Only his personal guard remained, weapons drawn, torn between duty and self-preservation. I set out. The Alpha command was absolute. Even his guard could not resist it. They retreated, though he could see in their eyes that it cost them dearly to leave their king alone with a potential threat. Alone with the accused. Alone with whatever was happening to him. The transformation began. Cassian felt his bones start to crack and reform. Felt his skin ripple as fur began to emerge. Felt his jaw extend and his teeth sharpen. But this was not his wolf. His wolf was large and powerful and perfectly controlled. This was the other thing. The devourer. The creature burst forth in an explosion of power that shattered the stone floor beneath his feet. It was massive, easily twice the size of any natural wolf, with fur so dark it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its eyes burned with an inner fire that had no place in any living thing. Its teeth were designed not just to kill, but to destroy utterly and completely. And it was completely, utterly beyond Cassian's control. He was aware. He could see through its eyes, could feel its muscles bunch and coil. But he could not direct it, could not stop it, could not do anything but watch as it turned its burning gaze toward Rhiannon, who stood frozen in her chains, finally showing the fear that had been absent before. The beast took one step toward her, then another. It lowered its massive head, bringing those terrible jaws close enough that one snap could end her life in an instant. Rhiannon had gone pale. Her breathing was rapid and shallow, but she still did not look away. The devourer inhaled deeply, drawing in her scent. And then something happened that Cassian would remember for the rest of his immortal life. The beast's front legs folded, its massive body lowered, its head bowed until its muzzle touched the broken stone floor. The devourer, the unkillable monster that had torn apart armies and leveled cities. The creature that had never submitted to anything or anyone in 5,000 years of existence, knelt before a girl in chains. Cassian felt his consciousness slam back into control as the beast retreated, not because he forced it, but because it chose to surrender. The transformation reversed in seconds, leaving him kneeling on the floor in human form, naked and gasping, and completely disoriented. Silence filled the hall. Then, footsteps. Small, hesitant footsteps, as Rhiannon, still bound in silver chains that should have prevented any movement, walked toward him. She knelt down so they were at eye level. "What are you?" Cassian asked again. But this time it was a plea rather than a demand. Rhiannon reached out with bound hands and placed her palm against his cheek. Her skin was warm. The silver chains fell away from her wrists, clattering to the floor, the metal smoking and melting as if it had never been meant to. "Hold her in the first place." "I told you," she whispered. "I am nothing. But maybe nothing is exactly what you need." And for the first time in 347 years, Cassian Thornwood had absolutely no idea what to do next. If you are enjoying this story, do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories like this one. The throne room remained empty, except for the two of them. Cassian could hear his guards outside the massive doors, could sense their anxiety and confusion bleeding through the bond he maintained with his inner circle. They wanted to enter. They wanted to protect him. They did not understand that protection might no longer be relevant. He was still kneeling on the cold stone floor, very aware of his nakedness and vulnerability. Rhiannon had not moved her hand from his face. Her palm was warm, almost hot, and where her skin touched his, he felt something he could not name. It was not pain exactly, though there was an intensity to it that bordered on overwhelming. It was more like recognition, like two parts of something that had been separated finally coming back into alignment. "You need to tell me what is happening," Cassian said. His voice was steady despite the chaos in his mind. Centuries of ruling had taught him to maintain composure, even when everything inside him was screaming. "I am not entirely certain," Rhiannon admitted. She pulled her hand back slowly, and Cassian felt the loss of contact like a physical ache. "I have never done that before. I have never made anything kneel. I did not even know I could." Cassian stood, and a moment later, shadows coalesced around him, forming into dark clothing. A small magic, one of the few he had mastered beyond the transformation. Rhiannon watched with curious eyes, but did not seem surprised. "The chains," Cassian said. "They were silver. Pure silver blessed by moon priests. They should have burned you even if you had no wolf. They certainly should. Not have melted." Rhiannon looked down at her wrists. The skin was unmarked. Not even a trace of the burns that should have been there after wearing silver for the 3 days she had been imprisoned. "I have never been hurt by silver," she said. "I thought that meant I was human, that I had no wolf to burn." She looked up at him, and in her eyes, Cassian saw the first real flicker of fear since this entire situation had begun. But it was not fear of him. It was fear of herself. "What is wrong with me?" The question was so vulnerable, so genuinely confused, that Cassian felt something shift in his chest. This was not an act. This was not some elaborate deception. Rhiannon truly had no idea what she was. "There is a library," Cassian said slowly, "in the oldest part of the palace. Books that predate my rule. Texts that my father collected, and his father before him, going back to the founding of the kingdom. If there are answers, they will be there. You want to help me?" Rhiannon's surprise was evident. "You were about to execute me 5 minutes ago." 5 minutes ago, I thought you were a traitor who healed rebels," Cassian said. He moved toward the throne but did not sit. Standing beside it felt more appropriate somehow, less formal, less like a king addressing a subject, and more like one confused individual speaking to another. "Now I think you are something else entirely. Something that made my beast, a creature that has never bowed to anything, kneel at your feet." That changes the situation considerably. He studied her carefully. She was small, probably barely 5 feet tall if he had to guess. Thin to the point of being gaunt, like she had not eaten well in months. Her clothes were simple homespun, patched in places, worn in others. Everything about her appearance screamed poverty and powerlessness. But her eyes, those storm-gray eyes, held something that belied the fragile exterior. Not power, exactly. Something quieter than that. Something that did not need to announce itself because it simply was. "The rebels you healed," Cassian said. "Did they tell you why they were fighting?" Rhiannon hesitated. Cassian could see her weighing her options, trying to decide if honesty would damn her further or if lies would be detected. Finally, she nodded. They said the local alpha was taxing them into starvation, taking every third harvest, every other hunting kill. They said children were dying because there was not enough food to last the winter. They said when they petitioned for relief, they were beaten and thrown in cells. Cassian felt his jaw tighten. "Which territory?" "Greystone," Rhiannon said. "Alpha Marcus presides." Alpha Marcus. Cassian knew him. An old wolf, nearly as old as Cassian himself. He had been given Greystone territory as a reward for service during the Continental Wars 2 centuries ago. He was supposed to be reliable, loyal, competent. "And you believed them?" Cassian asked. "I saw the scars," Rhiannon said simply. "Saw how thin they were. I saw the desperation in their eyes. I have seen that look before. You cannot fake starvation. You cannot pretend bones poking through skin. Whatever they did, whatever crimes they committed, they did them because they were dying." She paused, then added softly, "Just because someone breaks your law does not mean they are wrong." Cassian could have her killed for those words alone. The implication that his laws might be unjust, that his rule might create suffering rather than prevent it. But he did not. Because somewhere in the back of his mind, in a place he rarely allowed himself to examine, he wondered if she might be right. "Alpha Marcus will answer for this," Cassian said. "If what you say is true, if he has been abusing his authority, there will be consequences." "Will there?" Rhiannon's skepticism was clear. "Or will you simply sweep it aside because dealing with it would be inconvenient? Because investigating might reveal other territories where the same thing is happening? Because actually holding your alphas accountable might make you look weak?" The words should have enraged him. Instead, Cassian found himself almost smiling. "You are either the bravest person I have ever met, or you have a death wish." "Maybe both," Rhiannon said. "Or maybe I just stopped caring about consequences when I decided that living in fear was not actually living." She moved closer to the throne, her bare feet making no sound on the stone floor. "You asked what I am. I cannot answer that. But I can tell you what I am not. I am not a rebel. I am not a traitor. I am not someone who wants to destroy your kingdom or overthrow your rule. I am just someone who tried to save lives. And apparently that is a crime in your world. It is when those lives belong to people who would destroy the peace I have built," Cassian said. But even as he spoke the words, he heard how hollow they sounded. Peace. Was it truly peace if people were starving? Was it order if alphas could abuse their territories without oversight? "You keep talking about the peace you have built," Rhiannon said. "But peace for who? The strong? The powerful? What about everyone else? What about the people who are not alphas or council members or wealthy merchants? Where is their peace?" Cassian had no immediate answer. The question cut too close to thoughts he had been avoiding for decades. "The library," he said finally. "We will go to the library. We will find out what you are. And then we will decide what happens next." He moved toward the doors, then paused. "But know this, Rhiannon. Whatever you are, whatever made my beast kneel, it does not give you power over me. I am still the Alpha King. I still rule here. And if I determine that you are a threat, I will end you, beast or no beast. Rhiannon met his eyes steadily. I would expect nothing less. What do you think will happen next? Leave your predictions in the comments below. The library was not what Rhiannon expected. She had imagined something grand and beautiful, with soaring ceilings and elegant shelves, and that particular smell of old books and leather bindings. What she got instead was a dungeon, or at least it looked like one. The room was deep in the palace, accessed through a series of descending staircases that seemed to go down forever. The walls were bare stone, damp with moisture that seeped through from whatever groundwater ran beneath the palace. The shelves were crude wooden things, warped with age and moisture, and the books themselves were not the pristine, well-maintained volumes she had pictured. They were ancient, crumbling, some of them bound in materials she did not want to examine too closely. The smell was not pleasant. Mold and decay and something else. Something organic and wrong. This is where you keep your oldest texts? Rhiannon asked. 2 of Cassian's personal guards had accompanied them, though they remained at the entrance to the library, clearly uncomfortable with the entire situation. Cassian had not spoken during the descent. He had simply led the way, his expression unreadable. This is where we keep the texts that are too dangerous to destroy but too forbidden to display, Cassian said. He moved to one of the shelves and began examining titles, though in the dim torchlight it was difficult to read the faded writing on the spines. Books about blood magic, texts on forbidden transformations, histories that contradict the official, records, knowledge that could start wars or end kingdoms if it fell into the wrong hands. And you think the answer to what I am is in here? Rhiannon wrapped her arms around herself. The temperature had dropped significantly during their descent, and her thin clothing provided little warmth. Because that is not exactly reassuring. Cassian pulled a book from the shelf. The binding cracked ominously as he opened it. When I was young, barely a century old, my father brought me here. He showed me a text that described creatures from before the first alphas, before the werewolf packs as we know them. He called them the primordials, the first children of the moon. He flipped through pages carefully, his eyes scanning text written in a language Rhiannon did not recognize. According to the legends, they were not like us. They did not transform from human to wolf. They were something else, something that existed in between, something that predated the separation between the 2 forms. Rhiannon moved closer, trying to see the book. What happened to them? They disappeared, Cassian said. Some texts say they were hunted to extinction by early humans who feared them. Others say they chose to fade away, that they saw what was coming and decided they had no place in a world where clear divisions between human and animal were necessary for survival. A few. He paused, his finger stopping on a particular passage. A few say they went into hiding, that they scattered and bred with humans, diluting their blood over generations, until their descendants did not even know what they carried. He looked up at her, and Rhiannon saw something in his eyes she had not seen before. Not fear, exactly. More like awe, mixed with uncertainty. The text says that primordials could not be harmed by silver because silver was a purifier, meant to burn away corruption and dark magic. But primordials were not corrupt. They were pure, the first creation. Silver had no effect on them because there was nothing in them that needed purification. Rhiannon felt her breath catch. You think that is what I am? A descendant of these primordials? I think it would explain several things, Cassian said. Why my beast recognized you. Why it submitted to you. The devourer inside me is old. Older than my human lineage. Older than the werewolf curse that created the alphas. If it remembers something from before, if some instinct buried in its consciousness recalls what primordials were, it would recognize you as something above it in the hierarchy of creation. He set the book down carefully on a nearby table, mindful of its fragility. But this is just one text, one theory. We need more information. They searched for hours. Cassian pulled book after book from the shelves, some of them so old the pages disintegrated at his touch. Rhiannon tried to help, but most of the texts were in languages she could not read. Latin, ancient Greek, some language that used symbols instead of letters. "Here," Cassian said suddenly. "This one. It is written in Old English. Can you read it?" Rhiannon moved to his side. The book he held was smaller than the others, bound in what looked like tree bark rather than leather. The pages were made from something that was not quite paper, vellum perhaps, or something similar. "I can try," she said. She took the book carefully, surprised by how warm it felt in her hands, almost like it was alive. The text was difficult to parse. The spelling was archaic, and the grammar strange. But slowly, haltingly, she began to read aloud. In the time before the sun knew the moon, when the world was young and magic walked in daylight, there were the firstborn, children of the earth and sky, neither beast nor human, but both and neither. They walked on 2 legs and 4. They spoke in words and howls. They lived in cities and forests. They were the bridge between all things. She paused, her finger tracing the next line. The firstborn needed no pack, for each was complete unto themselves. They needed no alpha, for hierarchy was a concept that came later, with lesser creatures. They needed no mate bond, for they were whole. Her voice faltered, but some among them grew lonely. Some saw the humans and the beasts, saw how they formed connections, how they built families and communities. And some of the firstborn chose to join them, chose to bind themselves to others, chose to be less than whole, so they could be part of something greater. Cassian leaned over her shoulder, reading along. His proximity made her very aware of his presence, of the heat that radiated from his body, of the scent that clung to him. Not cologne, something more fundamental, like storms and steel and ancient forests. "Keep reading," he said softly. Rhiannon continued. Those who chose binding changed. Their children were lesser than they had been, and their children's children lesser still, until the blood of the firstborn became so diluted that it was forgotten. Entirely, until the descendants walked as human or beast, but never both, until the magic faded to the point that only the faintest echo remained. She turned the page. But the blood remembers, even when the mind forgets, even when generations have passed and the old ways are lost. The blood remembers what it was, and in times of great need, when the world cries out for balance, the blood wakes. The firstborn return, not as they were, for that time has passed, but as what they could be, what they must be. The bridge rebuilt, the balance restored. The next page was blank, and the one after that, and every page that followed, as if the text had simply ended mid-thought. "That is it?" Rhiannon asked. "That is all it says?" Cassian took the book from her, examining it closely. "These blank pages, they are not supposed to be blank." He held one up to the torchlight. "You can see the impression of text, like something was written and then erased, or like the ink faded over time." He set the book down and turned to face her fully. "Rhiannon, when did your healing abilities start?" The question caught her off guard. "I have always been able to heal, for as long as I can remember." "Why? Did you have parents, siblings, anyone who shared your gift?" Rhiannon felt a familiar ache in her chest. "I was found as an infant on the steps of the village healer's home. She raised me, taught me everything she knew about herbs and medicine. But no, I have no memory of birth parents, no family, that I know of." Cassian began pacing, his mind clearly working through possibilities. And this healing, describe it to me, in detail. I just know, Rhiannon said. When I look at someone who is hurt, I can see what is wrong. Not with my eyes exactly. It is more like I feel it. I know where the damage is, how deep it goes, what needs to be done to fix it. And then I do it. How? Cassian pressed. Do you use herbs? Incantations? Tools? Sometimes herbs for minor things. Injuries for serious. I just touch them and think about them being whole. And they become whole. She saw the look on his face and added defensively, I know how it sounds, but it is the truth. I do not know how to explain it better than that. You do not need to explain it better, Cassian said, because I understand exactly what you are describing. That is not healing. That is reality manipulation. You are not fixing what is broken. You are rewriting what is real to match what should be. That is not a learned skill. That is not magic that can be taught. That is fundamental power, the kind of power that only primordials were said to possess. Rhiannon felt dizzy. She reached out and steadied herself against the table. No, that is not possible. I am nobody. I am just a village healer. I grow herbs and deliver babies and set broken bones. I am not some ancient, powerful creature. I am just me. Cassian moved closer. The rebels you healed. The ones with fatal wounds. How bad were they? A spear through his chest, Rhiannon said quietly. It had punctured his lung and nicked his heart. He was drowning in his own blood when they brought him to me. And you saved him? Yes. How long did it take? Maybe 10 minutes. Cassian closed his eyes briefly. Rhiannon, a healing like that would kill most pack healers. The amount of energy required to knit muscle and bone and organ tissue, to replace lost blood, to restart a heart that is failing. Even if they could manage it, it would take hours, days even, and they would be unconscious for a week afterward from the strain. He opened his eyes, and the intensity in his gaze made her want to step back. But she held her ground. You did it in 10 minutes, and you are standing here now with no apparent ill effects. Because to you, it was not a miraculous feat of healing. It was just correcting something that was wrong, making reality match what should be. I felt tired afterward, Rhiannon said weakly. I had to sleep for a few hours. Hours, Cassian repeated. Not days, not weeks, hours. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Do you understand what you are? What you represent? I represent a girl who is very confused and very cold, and would really like to not be in this creepy dungeon library anymore, Rhiannon said. But even as she spoke, she felt something shifting inside her. Like a door that had been locked her entire life was finally beginning to open. Like something that had been sleeping was starting to wake up, and it terrified her. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure you are subscribed with notifications on. Cassian saw the fear in her eyes, and his expression softened fractionally. Come on. We have learned enough for tonight. You need food and rest and somewhere warm to sleep. The rest can wait until morning. They left the library, climbing back up the endless stairs until they emerged into the main palace. The guards fell into step behind them, maintaining a respectful distance. Rhiannon noticed that their hands never strayed far from their weapons. They did not trust her. She could not blame them. She did not trust herself at the moment. Where are we going? She asked, as Cassian led her through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Somewhere you will not freeze to death, Cassian said. Despite what you might think, I do not make a habit of executing people who have committed no actual crime. You will be housed in the guest wing until we sort this situation out. I am still a prisoner then. You are a guest, Cassian corrected. Guests are free to leave. Prisoners are not. But I would strongly suggest you stay. Whatever you are, there are people who will want to kill you if they discover your existence. The old alphas, the ones who remember the stories about primordials. They will see you as a threat to their power. And you do not? Rhiannon challenged. Cassian stopped walking. He turned to face her, and the guards immediately stepped back, giving them space. I see you as many things, he said quietly. A mystery, a potential threat, a possible asset, a complication I do not need. But mostly I see you as someone who did not ask for any of this, who was living her life, helping people, until circumstances dragged her into a situation far beyond her control or understanding. And I remember what that feels like. There was something in his voice, something old and hurt, and buried deep. Rhiannon found herself asking, Were you? How old? When you returned? 17, Cassian said. In human years. I was dying of a fever. My village healer could not help me. A traveling alpha came through and offered my father a choice. Let me die, or let him turn me. My father chose the latter. I woke up 3 days later as something I did not understand, with power I could not control, and a beast inside me that wanted to destroy everything I loved. He started walking again, and Rhiannon hurried to keep up. It took me 50 years to master the transformation. Another 50 to learn how to rule the beast instead of letting it rule me. And I am still learning. Still fighting it. Every single day. Is that why you keep it locked away? Rhiannon asked. The Devourer. Is that why you seemed so shocked when it took control? The Devourer has taken control exactly 3 times in my life, Cassian said. The first was the night I was turned, when I killed everyone in my village, including my own family, because I could not. Stop it. The second was during the Continental Wars, when I used it to end a siege that would have cost thousands of lives. I let it loose on the enemy army, and it did not stop until there was nothing left but blood and bones. And the third time? Was today, Cassian said. In the throne room. With you. They reached a door carved with intricate designs. Cassian pushed it open to reveal a room that was the complete opposite of the library dungeon. It was warm and elegant, with a large bed, covered in soft furs, a fireplace already lit and crackling, walls hung with tapestries depicting forest scenes. A bathing room was visible through another door, and Rhiannon could see steam rising from what must be a heated bath. This is too much, she protested. This is barely adequate, Cassian countered. But it will serve for now. There are clothes in the wardrobe. Food will be brought up shortly. The windows are not locked, and there are no guards on your door. You are free to leave if, you wish. But as I said, I would advise against it. He turned to go, then paused. Rhiannon, what happened today in the throne room, when the Devourer knelt before you? I need you to understand how unprecedented that was. How impossible. That creature has never submitted to anything. Not to my will when I was young and weak. Not to the combined might of 5 alpha armies during the wars. Not to time or magic or any force in this world. He met her eyes, and she saw genuine uncertainty there. So whatever you are, whatever blood runs in your veins, it is something beyond my understanding. Something that reaches back to the very foundations of what we are. And that means everything I thought I knew about power and hierarchy and natural order might be wrong. Rhiannon did not know what to say to that. Cassian did not seem to expect a response. He simply nodded once and left, pulling the door closed behind him. She stood alone in the beautiful room, listening to the crackle of the fire, and trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. She had gone from condemned prisoner to honored guest, from nobody to possibly being a descendant of ancient primordials, from powerless to being something that even the Alpha King feared. It was too much, too fast, too impossible. She moved to the window and looked out over the palace grounds. Below, she could see wolves moving through the courtyards, guards on patrol, servants hurrying about their duties. Normal life, continuing as if the world had not just tilted on its axis. A knock at the door made her turn. "Come in," she called. A young woman entered carrying a tray laden with food. She looked nervous, her eyes darting around the room before finally settling on Rhiannon. "His Majesty said you would need dinner," she said. Her voice shook slightly. "I brought a selection. I was not certain what you would prefer." "Thank you," Rhiannon said gently. "You can set it on the table." The girl did so quickly, then started to leave. But at the door, she paused. "Is it true?" she asked. "What they are saying about what happened in the throne room?" "That depends on what they are saying," Rhiannon said. "They say the king's beast bowed to you, that it knelt like you were its alpha, like you were something even higher than an alpha." The girl's eyes were wide. "They say you must be blessed by the moon goddess herself." Rhiannon almost laughed. "Blessed. That was one way to describe it. Cursed might be more accurate." "I honestly do not know what I am," she said. "But I mean no harm to anyone. You do not need to be afraid of me." The girl studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, she smiled. "I am not afraid. I think it is wonderful. The king has been alone for so long. Everyone whispers about it. How he keeps everyone at a distance. How he trusts no one completely. Maybe you are what he needs. Someone he cannot control. Someone who makes him remember what it is like to be uncertain." And, with that cryptic statement, she left. Rhiannon turned back to the food. Her stomach reminded her that she had not eaten since before her arrest 3 days ago. She sat and began to eat, her mind churning with questions that had no answers yet. Meanwhile, in another part of the palace, Cassian stood in his private chambers and stared into his own fireplace. His beta, Marcus, stood nearby. Not Alpha Marcus of Greystone. This was Marcus Shadowmere, Cassian's oldest friend and most trusted advisor. He had been there since the beginning. Since the night Cassian's beast first emerged. Since the decades of learning control. Since the rise to power that culminated in Cassian becoming the Alpha King. "Tell me you are not actually considering this," Marcus said. He was tall and lean, with silver-streaked hair despite his relative youth. Werewolves aged slowly, but stress and worry could still leave their marks. "The girl is a complication we do not need. Execute her or exile her. But do not keep her here." "She is not a girl," Cassian said. "She is potentially a primordial descendant. Do you understand what that means?" "I understand that it means she is dangerous," Marcus countered. "That she represents a power structure that predates our own. That if other wolves find out she exists, they will either try to use her or kill her. And we will be caught in the middle of whatever chaos follows." Cassian turned to face his beta. "The devourer knelt to her, Marcus. The beast that I have. Spent 3 centuries learning to control. The creature that represents everything dark and terrible in my lineage. Recognized her as something above itself. That is not a complication. That is a revelation. A revelation that could destroy you," Marcus said. "Your power, your authority, everything you have built is based on the fact that you are the strongest, the most dangerous, the apex predator. If it becomes known that there is something you submit to, something you bow before, the other. Alphas will see weakness. They will challenge you, and challenges lead to war. Then let them challenge," Cassian said. "I did not become king by avoiding threats. I became king by facing them head-on and proving that I was willing to do whatever was necessary to maintain order." Marcus sighed. "You are not hearing me. This is different. This is not about strength or will or combat prowess. This is about the fundamental nature of power. If Rhiannon truly is what you think she is, then she represents a level of authority that supersedes yours by virtue of what she is, not what she has done. You cannot fight that. You cannot defeat that. All you can do is submit to it, or destroy it. I am not going to destroy her, Cassian said flatly. She has done nothing wrong. She healed people. She showed mercy. Those are not crimes. They are when they threaten the stability of your rule, Marcus said. But he seemed to sense that the argument was pointless. Cassian had made up his mind. At least tell me you are not keeping her in the palace. She is in the West Guest Wing, Cassian said, under no guard, free to leave whenever she wishes. Marcus stared at him. You cannot be serious. Completely serious, Cassian said. I will not hold her prisoner for something she did not choose. I will not punish her for being born with the wrong bloodline. She stays as my guest until we figure out what to do next. And what if she decides to leave? What if she walks out and disappears? Then she disappears, Cassian said. And we go back to our normal lives and pretend this never happened. Marcus shook his head. You know that is not possible. The moment your beast recognized her, the moment it knelt, everything changed. You cannot go back. Whatever she awakened in you, whatever this is, it will not simply fade away if she leaves. Cassian knew his beta was right. He could feel it even now. A pull. A connection that had not existed before, like a string tied somewhere deep in. His chest, leading off into the distance toward wherever Rhiannon was. It was not painful. It was not even unpleasant, but it was there, constant and undeniable. She is my mate, Cassian said quietly. The words felt heavy, final. Marcus went very still. Are you certain? The Devourer does not recognize pact bonds or political alliances, Cassian said. It barely tolerates my control. The only thing that could make it submit completely, absolutely without question, is a true mate bond. Not a chosen mate. Not a political match. A fated mate. The kind that happens once in a millennium, if at all. He moved to the window, looking out toward the West Wing where he knew Rhiannon was probably eating dinner and trying to make sense of her new reality. I felt it the moment she walked into the throne room. I just did not understand what it was. I thought it was just curiosity, interest in something unusual. But when the Devourer emerged and recognized her, when it knelt, I felt the bond snap. Into place. Like something that had always been meant to exist finally becoming real. Does she know? Marcus asked. I do not think so, Cassian said. She has no wolf to recognize the bond, no instincts to tell her what this is. To her, I am probably just a terrifying king who could still decide to execute her at any moment. You need to tell her, Marcus said. If this bond exists, if it is real, she deserves to know. I will, Cassian said. When the time is right. When she has had to adjust to everything else. Adding a mate bond on top of discovering she might be a primordial descendant seems like too much all at once. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What are you going to do about Alpha Marcus of Greystone? Investigate her claims, Cassian said immediately. If he has been abusing his territory, if he has been taxing his people into starvation, he will answer for it. I will not tolerate corruption in my alphas, not even for old loyalty. That will send a message, Marcus said. The other alphas will see it as weakness, you investigating based on the word of an accused traitor. Then they can think what they want, Cassian said. I built this kingdom on the principle that power comes with responsibility. That rule means protecting those who cannot protect themselves. If I ignore suffering, because investigating it is politically inconvenient, then I am no better than the tyrants I overthrew to take this throne. Marcus smiled faintly. There is the idealistic young Alpha I remember. I wondered where he had gone over the centuries. He got buried under 300 years of compromise and political calculation, Cassian admitted. But maybe it is time to remember why I wanted to be king in the first place. It was not for the power. It was because I thought I could do better than what came before. Maybe I need to prove that again. to others and to myself. And to her, Marcus said knowingly. You want to prove to your mate that you are worthy. I want to prove to everyone that strength without justice is just tyranny, Cassian said. But yes, I suppose I want her to see that I am not just the monster everyone thinks I am, that there is something more to me than just the devourer and the power it brings. Marcus moved toward the door. I will make arrangements for the investigation. We will need to send neutral observers to Greystone, people who cannot be bribed or intimidated, people whose reports will be believed. Use the Shadow Guard, Cassian said. They report directly to me. No one else knows their identities. They can move through the territory and gather information without Marcus knowing he is being investigated. It will take time, Marcus warned. At least a week, maybe 2, to gather enough evidence to bring formal charges if wrongdoing exists. Then we take the time, Cassian said. This is too important to rush. If we are going to accuse an alpha of abuse of power, we need to be absolutely certain of our facts. Marcus nodded and left. Cassian remained at the window, watching the night deepen over the palace grounds. Somewhere in the west wing, Rhiannon was probably settling in for the night, probably confused and frightened and wondering what tomorrow would bring. He wanted to go to her, wanted to explain everything, the bond, the primordials, what he suspected she truly was. But he held back. She needed space, time to process. Rushing her would only make things worse. So instead, he stayed where he was and let the bond guide his awareness toward her. It was faint still, new and unacknowledged, but it was growing stronger with every passing hour. By morning, it would be impossible to ignore. And then they would both have to face what it meant for them, and what it meant for the kingdom that suddenly had a queen it had never expected. A queen who had no idea she was one. The night passed slowly. Rhiannon discovered that sleeping in a comfortable bed after 3 days in a cell was both wonderful and strange. The sheets were too soft, the silence too complete. She kept waking, expecting to find herself back in the dungeon, expecting guards to drag her out for execution. But each time she woke, she was still in the beautiful guest room, still safe, still alive. As dawn broke, she rose and found fresh clothes laid out for her. Not the simple homespun she was used to, but fine garments and soft fabrics, a dress in deep green that actually fit her properly, soft leather shoes, a warm cloak. Someone had been in her room while she slept, leaving these things for her. The thought should have been disturbing. Instead, she found it oddly comforting. Someone was taking care of her, making sure she had what she needed. When was the last time anyone had done that? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. She opened it to find not a servant, but Cassian himself. He looked different in the morning light, less like a terrifying king and more like a man who had not slept well. There were shadows under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of stress and worry. "Good morning," he said. "I hope you slept well?" "Well enough," Rhiannon said. She stepped back to let him enter. "Is something wrong?" "I need to ask you something," Cassian said. He moved to the center of the room but did not sit. Just stood there, radiating that particular intensity that seemed to follow him everywhere. "And I need you to answer honestly, even if you think the answer might upset me." Rhiannon felt her stomach tighten. "All right. Do you feel anything when you look at me?" Cassian asked. "Anything unusual or unexpected or hard to explain?" Rhiannon considered the question carefully. Did she feel something? Yes. She had felt it from the moment she saw him in the throne room. A pull, a awareness. Like her entire being was oriented toward him whether she wanted it to be or not. "I feel something," she admitted. "I do not know what it is. It is like you are magnetic, and I am iron. Like no matter where you are in a room, I know exactly where you are standing without having to look. Cassian closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, there was something raw and vulnerable in his expression. That is the mate bond. You are my fated mate, Rhiannon. My true mate. The one person in all the world who was made to complete me. The words hung in the air between them. Rhiannon felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. That is not possible, she whispered. I have no wolf. I cannot be anyone's mate. Mate bonds are between wolves. Mate bonds are between souls, Cassian corrected. The wolf is just the part that recognizes it. But you do not need a wolf to have a soul. And my wolf, both my wolf and the devourer, recognize you as mate, as the one person they will submit to absolutely. He took a step toward her, then seemed to think better of it and stopped. I know this is overwhelming. I know you did not ask for this, but I need you to understand what it means. It means we are connected, bound together in a way that transcends choice or preference or logic. It means that hurting you would hurt me, that your happiness matters to me in a way I cannot control or suppress, that I will protect you with everything I have because failing to do so would break something fundamental in me. Rhiannon sat down on the edge of the bed because her legs suddenly felt weak. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know, Cassian said. Because keeping it from you would be a lie, and I will not build anything between us on deception. And because I need you to understand that whatever happens next, whatever we discover about what you are or what your powers might be, you are not alone. You have someone who will stand with you, even if that someone is a broken king with a monster inside him. Rhiannon looked up at him, really looked at him, and she saw past the power and the authority and the 300 years of accumulated scars and trauma. She saw someone who was just as lost and confused as she was. Someone who had been alone for so long he had forgotten what it felt like to have someone who truly mattered. I am not sure I can be what you need, she said honestly. I do not know how to be a mate. I do not know how to be whatever a primordial is supposed to be. I barely know how to be me. Then we will figure it out together, Cassian said. No expectations, no pressure, just two people trying to navigate an impossible situation and hoping they do not destroy everything in the process. Despite everything, despite the fear and confusion and overwhelming impossibility of it all, Rhiannon found herself smiling. That might be the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me. I am trying honesty as a strategy, Cassian said. It is not something I have much practice with. Politics tends to reward deception and misdirection, but with you, I think the truth is the only thing that has any chance of working. He moved to the window, giving her space. I have sent investigators to Greystone to verify your claims about Alpha Marcus. If what you said is true, if he has been abusing his territory, he will be removed from power and punished accordingly. The people there will receive aid, food, resources, whatever they need to recover. Rhiannon felt something warm bloom in her chest. You believe me. I believe that you had no reason to lie, Cassian said. And I believe that I have been too removed from my territories for too long, too focused on the big picture, and not enough on the individual lives that make up that picture. You were right yesterday when you questioned whose peace I have been maintaining. It is time I made sure the answer includes everyone, not just the powerful. He turned back to face her. But all of that is for later. Right now, I need to know what you want to do. You are free to leave if you wish. I will provide you with safe passage to wherever you want to go, resources to start a new life, protection if you need it. Or you can stay. You can help me figure out what you are, what your powers mean, what role you might play in a world that has forgotten your kind ever existed. The choice is yours. Rhiannon thought about it, thought about going back to her village, to her small life of healing and growing herbs, thought about running, finding somewhere far away where no one knew what she was or what she represented. And then she thought about the bond she felt pulling her toward this complicated, dangerous, utterly sincere man who was offering her something no one else ever had. A choice, not an order, not a demand, a genuine choice. "I will stay," she said. "At least for now. At least until we understand what this all means. But I have conditions." Cassian raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "No more dungeons. If we are going to research what I am, we do it in proper libraries with windows and fresh air." "Agreed," Cassian said immediately. "I want to meet your beta, Marcus. If I am going to be here, I want to know the people who are important to you." "That can be arranged," Cassian said. "And I want your word that you will not execute anyone without a fair trial, that you will actually investigate when people claim injustice, that you will be the king you claim you want to be, and not just the monster everyone expects." Cassian was quiet for a long moment. Then he crossed the room and knelt. Before her. Not the forced kneeling of the devourer, but a deliberate, conscious choice. A king lowering himself before someone he recognized as an equal. "You have my word," he said, "on my life, on my crown, on everything I am. I will be better. For you. For my people. For the kingdom we might build together if you choose to stay." Rhiannon reached out and placed her hand on his cheek, the same gesture she had made in the throne room. And this time she felt it. The bond. The connection. The sense of two souls recognizing each other across time and space, and all the circumstances that should have kept them apart. "Then I choose to stay," she whispered. And when Cassian smiled, it transformed his face from something hard and dangerous into something almost beautiful. Something that made her heart skip in a way that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with possibility. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who loves epic romance. Tell me in the comments. Did you see this ending coming? The days that followed were unlike anything Rhiannon had ever experienced. Cassian kept his promise. They moved their research to the main palace library, a soaring space filled with sunlight and the smell of aging paper and leather. It was nothing like the dungeon archive, and Rhiannon found she could breathe easier surrounded by beauty instead of decay. Marcus Shadowmere turned out to be exactly what a beta should be. Loyal but not blind, willing to question. Cassian when necessary, protective of his alpha, but also capable of seeing the bigger picture. He looked at Rhiannon with frank curiosity, rather than fear or hostility. "So, you are the one who made the devourer kneel," he said when they were introduced. "I have known Cassian for 230 years, and I have never seen anything like it. You must be something extraordinary." "I am still trying to figure out what that something is," Rhiannon said. "Any insights would be appreciated." Marcus smiled. "My insight is that you are exactly what he needs. Someone who does not fear him. Someone who sees past the crown and the power to the person underneath. That is rarer than you might think." The investigation into Greystone took 10 days. When the Shadow Guard returned, their reports were damning. Alpha Marcus had been systematically abusing his territory for decades. Excessive taxation, hoarding resources while his people starved, brutal punishments for even minor infractions. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Cassian called a council session. Every Alpha in the Northern Territories was summoned to witness what happened when one of their number betrayed the trust given to them. Rhiannon watched from the gallery as Alpha Marcus of Greystone was brought before the court in chains. He was defiant at first, claiming the accusations were lies spread by rebels and malcontents. But as the evidence mounted, as witness after witness testified to the suffering he had caused, his defiance crumbled into desperate attempts at justification. "I was maintaining order," he said. "I was preventing chaos. Every decision I made was in service to the kingdom." "You were serving yourself," Cassian said coldly. "You took a position of trust and twisted it into an instrument of oppression. You made people suffer, not because it was necessary, but because you could. Because you enjoyed the power it gave you. The judgment was swift and absolute. Alpha Marcus was stripped of his title and territory. His assets were seized and distributed to the people of Greystone as restitution. And then came the sentence that made the entire hall go silent. For crimes against the people you were sworn to protect, for abuse of power, for corruption of your oath as an alpha, I sentence you to exile. You will be stripped of your wolf. You will live out the rest of your days as human, powerless, with full memory of everything you once were, and everything you lost through your own choices. It was a fate worse than death for most wolves, the loss of their wolf, their strength, their long life. Alpha Marcus screamed as the moon priests performed the ritual, as they severed the connection between man and beast that defined what he was. When it was over, he was just a man, aging and weak and mortal. Guards led him away to the border where he would be released with nothing but the clothes on his back and the knowledge of what he had lost. The other alphas filed out in shocked silence. The message had been received loud and clear. Cassian was done tolerating corruption, was done looking the other way when his alphas failed their duties. A new age had begun, one where justice mattered, where the weak were protected instead of exploited, where power came with real accountability. That night, Cassian found Rhiannon on the terrace outside her room, looking up at the stars. "Do you think I was too harsh?" he asked. "He deserved death," Rhiannon said. "What you gave him was mercy wrapped in punishment. He gets to live. He just has to live with the consequences of his choices." She turned to look at him. "You did the right thing. Even if it was difficult. It was easier than it should have been," Cassian admitted. "I wanted to kill him. When I saw the reports, when I understood how much suffering he had caused, the Devourer wanted to tear him apart. But you asked me to be better. To be the king I claim to want to be. So I chose justice instead of vengeance." Rhiannon moved closer. Over the past 10 days, she had grown more comfortable with the bond between them, more willing to acknowledge the pull that drew her to him. "You know what I have realized?" she said. "You are not actually a monster. You have a monster inside you, yes. But you are not it. The fact that you fight it, that you choose control over chaos even when chaos would be easier, that makes you more human than most people who have never had to struggle with anything darker than a bad temper." Cassian laughed softly. "I am not sure human is the right word. I have not been human in over 3 centuries. "Then maybe you are something better," Rhiannon said. "Maybe you are what humans should aspire to be, strong enough to protect, wise enough to know when not to use that strength, honest enough to admit when you are wrong, and brave enough to change." She reached up and touched his face. The gesture had become familiar between them, a connection that went beyond words. "I am glad I stayed." "I am glad you stayed too," Cassian said. His hand came up to cover hers, holding her palm against his cheek. "You have changed everything. The way I see my kingdom, the way I see myself, the way I think about what is possible." "We still do not know what I am," Rhiannon reminded him. "We have theories, but no proof, no real answers." "Then we will keep searching," Cassian said. "But maybe it does not matter as much as I thought it did. Maybe what matters is not what you are, but who you are. And who you are is someone brave and kind and absolutely extraordinary." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But Rhiannon did not pull away. She rose up on her toes and met him halfway. The kiss was gentle at first, exploratory, learning the shape of each other, the taste, the feel. Then it deepened, and Rhiannon felt the bond between them flare bright and strong and absolutely right. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing heavily, Cassian rested his forehead against hers. "I know we said no pressure, no expectations, but I need you to know that I am falling for you, completely and irrevocably. Mate bond or not, I would choose you, every time, in every universe, for as long as you will have me. Rhiannon felt tears prick at her eyes, happy tears. I am falling for you too. It terrifies me, but I cannot seem to stop it, and I am not sure I want to. Then do not stop it, Cassian whispered. Let yourself fall. I promise we'll catch you. And standing there under the stars, with the bond between them singing in perfect harmony, Rhiannon finally let go of the fear that had been holding her back. She let herself fall into the impossible, terrifying, absolutely perfect thing that was growing between her and the Alpha King, who had started as her executioner and somehow become her everything. 3 months later, the coronation took place. Not just a coronation for Cassian, who was already king, but a coronation for Rhiannon, the girl from nowhere who had become the queen of the Northern Territories, the primordial descendant who had awakened powers that were still growing stronger with each passing day, the mate of the most powerful alpha alive. She wore a crown made of silver that did not burn her. She stood before the gathered alphas and packs and territories and spoke words that would echo through history. Words about justice and mercy, about strength used in service rather than dominance, about a new age where power meant protection and rule meant responsibility. And when she finished, when the crowd erupted in cheers and acceptance, Cassian took her hand and led her back into the palace, back to the life they were building together, a life that balanced his darkness with her light, his power with her compassion, his centuries of experience with her fresh perspective. They were not perfect. They argued. They challenged each other. They pushed and pulled and tested the boundaries of what they could become together. But they were real, and they were right. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, until it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. The devourer never emerged again. It did not need to. It had found the one thing that could tame it without breaking it, not through force or control, but through acceptance and love. And the kingdom prospered under their combined rule. Justice tempered with mercy, strength balanced with wisdom, a queen who could heal anything, and a king who would destroy anything that threatened what they had built. Together, they were unstoppable. Together, they were exactly what the world needed. And as Rhiannon stood beside Cassian years later, watching the sun set over their kingdom, she thought about how far she had come from that girl in chains standing before a terrifying king. How much she had grown. How much they both had. Do you ever regret it? Cassian asked. Staying? Becoming queen? Tying yourself to me and all my complications? Rhiannon turned to him and smiled. Not for a single moment. You were right that first night. I was not alone, and neither were you. Not anymore. Not ever again.